Section 1. The Man in Black. If you've ever worked alone in a nearly empty store after midnight, then you know how strange silence can feel. A building designed for thousands of people suddenly becomes something else entirely. Every distant creak sounds louder. Every shadow seems deeper. And sometimes, your mind starts noticing things you'd normally ignore. At least, that's what I told myself for years. Back in 2015, while finishing college, I worked weekends as a night stalker at Walmart. It wasn't glamorous work, but student loans don't care about comfort. I needed money, and the overnight shift paid enough to help me stay afloat. Most nights followed the same routine. Deliveries arrived. Shelves needed restocking. The warehouse needed organizing. Customers were gone. Lights stayed on. And the store became a giant maze of aisles and echoes. On July 9th, 2015, a Thursday night, I clocked in with two co-workers, Alvin and Baco. That was it. 3 employees. 3 people in an enormous building. For the first few hours, everything felt normal. I was working in the electronics department, organizing merchandise and filling shelves under the constant hum of fluorescent lights. The store felt unusually quiet. Not peaceful, quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every movement. Sometime around the middle of my shift, I noticed motion in the corner of my eye. Someone had just walked past the aisle. I barely caught a glimpse, but something immediately felt wrong. Alvin and Baco were both wearing the same Walmart shirts I was wearing. We'd all clocked in together. I knew exactly what they looked like. The figure I'd seen wasn't wearing a staff shirt. Whoever it was dressed completely in black. I stopped what I was doing. A chill crawled up the back of my neck. Maybe one of my co-workers had thrown on a jacket. Maybe I'd imagined it. Trying to shake the feeling, I walked toward the end of the aisle and carefully peeked around the shelf. Nobody. Nothing. The aisle was empty. Rows of products sat perfectly still beneath the bright lights. I called out, "Alvin." No answer. "Baco." Silence. That bothered me more than seeing the figure. Sound traveled surprisingly well through the store at night. Usually somebody would respond. But this time, there was nothing. Just the distant hum of refrigeration units somewhere across the building. After standing there for several seconds, I convinced myself it was nothing and returned to work. Looking back now, I wish that had been the strangest thing that happened that night. It wasn't even close. Section 2. The laughing. A few minutes passed. I tried focusing on stocking shelves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was in the store. Every time I turned a corner, I found myself expecting to see that dark figure again. I was also desperately trying to finish my aisle because I'd been holding in a trip to the bathroom for far too long. I kept telling myself, just finish this section first. Then the crash happened. The sound exploded through the store. Metal rattled. Something slammed into the floor. I physically jumped. For a split second, I thought someone had fallen. I immediately ran toward the noise. The sound had come from several aisles away. When I reached it, I found a bicycle lying on the floor. Not leaning, not partially fallen, completely knocked down. I stared at it in confusion. The hook it had been hanging from was still attached, and perfectly fine. The bike hadn't simply slipped. Someone would have needed to put effort into knocking it loose. I looked around. Nothing. No movement. No voices. No explanation. My pulse began to quicken. I lifted the bicycle back onto its hook and started searching nearby aisles. At this point, I wasn't worried about ghosts or anything supernatural. I was worried about a trespasser. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Someone hiding in a closed store. As I moved farther toward the rear of the building, I reached the paper goods and cleaning supplies section. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Not a normal laugh. Not the kind of laugh someone makes after hearing a joke. It sounded wrong. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Almost forced. The noise came from what sounded like the next aisle over. My stomach tightened. I immediately moved toward it. The moment I reached the end of the aisle, my heart nearly stopped. A man was standing there, dressed entirely in black. He wasn't facing me. His back was turned, but his head was twisted just enough that only half of his face was visible. He wasn't moving. He wasn't speaking. He was simply standing there, watching. The image froze me in place. For a second, neither of us moved. Then suddenly he sprinted away. Not toward me. Away. His footsteps exploded across the floor as he disappeared between the aisles. I stood there stunned. Then I heard the laughing again. Farther away. Then footsteps. Then another laugh. The sound seemed to move around me. Like he was circling through the store. Like he wanted me to know he was there. I had a choice. Chase him. or find my coworkers. For once, common sense won. I turned and headed toward the women's department to find Alvin. Because whatever was happening, I no longer wanted to deal with it alone. Section 3. The bathroom stall. I eventually found Alvin working in the women's clothing section. The second I saw him, I walked over as fast as I could. "There's somebody in the store," I told him. His expression immediately changed. I explained everything. The figure in black, the bicycle, the laughing, the man standing at the end of the aisle. Alvin listened carefully. There was no joking around, no teasing. He could tell from my face that I was serious. We didn't have walkie-talkies that night, so I asked him to warn Baco if he saw him. At that point, though, there was another problem. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed the bathroom. The employee restroom was located in the warehouse section near the back of the building. Normally, it wasn't a big deal. That night felt different. Still, I told myself I was overreacting. I headed there alone. The warehouse seemed unusually quiet as I walked through it. The overhead lights buzzed softly. Pallets cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Every footstep echoed. I entered the restroom. Empty. At least it appeared that way. I stepped into a stall and locked the door. Like always, I covered the seat with toilet paper before sitting down. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then the bathroom door opened and closed. The sound echoed through the room. Instantly, I froze. There were only a few people in the building. Naturally, I called out, "Who was that?" No answer. The silence that followed felt heavy. I waited. Nothing. Then I heard it. That laugh. The exact same laugh. Closer than ever before. A wave of panic hit me. Slowly, a figure moved into view through the narrow gap between the stall door and partition. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. The person stepped closer, 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 until the gap was completely blocked. All I could see was a single eye staring directly at me. The eye didn't blink. It simply watched. Then came the whispering. Soft, low, unintelligible. I couldn't understand a single word. But hearing those whispers bounce off the bathroom walls made them feel far more disturbing. I didn't know what this person wanted. I didn't know if he was armed. I didn't know if he was mentally unstable. All I knew was that I was trapped in a bathroom stall with a stranger standing inches away on the other side of the door. And for the first time that night, I genuinely felt afraid. Section 4. The call for help. My hands were shaking. I needed to do something. Then I remembered I had Alvin's number saved in my phone. Without taking my eyes off that gap in the stall door, I pulled out my phone and called him. The ringing felt endless. The entire time, the eye remained there, watching, listening, waiting. Finally, Alvin answered. I spoke loudly on purpose, louder than necessary. "Alvin, get to the employee bathroom right now." My voice echoed across the tile walls. I wanted whoever was outside that stall to hear me. I wanted him to know someone was coming. I kept talking, kept repeating where I was, kept telling Alvin to hurry. For several tense seconds, nothing changed. The whispering stopped. The eye remained. Then suddenly the figure stepped back. The gap reappeared. I could see part of the restroom again. A second later, I heard rapid footsteps. The bathroom door flew open, then slammed shut. He was gone. I remained on the phone. "Please hurry," I told Alvin. Every second felt longer than the last. I stared at the stall door expecting it to open again, expecting that eye to reappear, expecting another laugh. Instead, there was only silence. Roughly 20 to 30 seconds later, the restroom door opened again. This time it was Alvin. I practically rushed out of the stall. "What happened?" he asked. I explained everything while trying to catch my breath. He told me he hadn't seen anyone during the walk there. Nobody in the hallway. Nobody near the warehouse. Nobody running away. Nothing. That made even less sense. The man had left only moments earlier, yet somehow he seemed to have vanished. We searched nearby areas briefly, but found no sign of him. No doors standing open. No evidence of where he'd gone. At that point, I wasn't interested in playing security guard. I stayed beside Alvin for the rest of the shift. Wherever he worked, I worked. The store suddenly felt much larger than before. Every distant noise made me look up. Every empty aisle felt suspicious. The remaining hours crawled by. Eventually, morning arrived. The sky brightened outside. Employees from the day shift started appearing. And with that, the tension slowly faded. But the questions remained. Who was that man? How had he gotten inside? And why had he spent the night seemingly stalking me through the store? Section 5. The static footage. By the time I got home, exhaustion finally started catching up with me. Still, I couldn't stop replaying the night's events. The figure in black, the bicycle crashing to the floor, the strange laughter, the eyes staring through the stall door. None of it felt normal. Before going to sleep, I sent a text message to my boss explaining everything. I figured management should at least know there had potentially been a trespasser inside the building. Then I went to bed. When I woke up later that afternoon, sometime around 3 o'clock, my phone was waiting beside me. There was a response from my boss. I opened it immediately. What he told me sent a chill through my entire body. According to him, when they checked the surveillance system, the camera feeds from the previous night were unusable. Every screen had returned static. Not one camera showed useful footage. Not one. He also said that, as far as he knew, nobody had intentionally turned the cameras off. I read the message several times. The words didn't seem real. The cameras were the one thing that could have answered every question. If someone had broken into the store, the footage should have shown it. If somebody had been following me through the aisles, the footage should have captured that too. Instead, there was nothing. Just static. No proof. No explanation. No clear evidence that anyone had ever been there at all. My boss believed me. At least that much was comforting. He thought whatever happened was likely connected to the camera failure. But without footage, there wasn't much anyone could do. No recorded break-in. No identified suspect. No answers. The incident faded into the background of store operations, becoming one more problem beyond the authority of an overnight stalker trying to pay off college loans. For me, though, it never completely disappeared. Years have passed since that shift. I've worked other jobs. I've worked late nights. I've spent time alone in empty buildings. Nothing has ever happened again that compares to what happened on July 9th, 2015. Maybe there was a trespasser hiding somewhere inside the store. Maybe someone found a way in and simply enjoyed terrifying employees. Maybe there is a perfectly logical explanation waiting to be discovered. I don't know. What I do know is this. In a Walmart that should have contained only 3 employees, I repeatedly saw a man dressed in black. I heard him laughing from empty aisles. I watched him stare at me from outside a bathroom stall. And when the only evidence that could have proven any of it existed was checked the next day, every camera showed nothing but static. To this day, it remains the only overnight shift of my life that left me with questions I still can't